Hello, hello. Welcome back to another episode of She's in Sync, the podcast for women looking to have a safe transition off birth control and heal their hormones naturally. I am going to be doing something a little different today in this podcast. And today I'm going to be taking you behind the scenes at my own personal labs and talking about why I would have never been able to clear my chronic acne until I ran these 4 functional labs. And the reason I want to take you behind the scenes of this is because I talk a lot about acne, I talk a lot about labs, but I think it's really, really helpful when you see the data and when you see how all of these things are interconnected. Because a big mistake I see women making is they're just focusing on skincare, right? They're doing all the topicals, they're doing all the peels, the facials, the red light therapy, but they're not looking at what is driving their acne internally. And the other mistake I see is that there's just a focus on one specific system. So a lot of times for me, I started at, it's just my hormones, right? Like my chin and jaw. When you Google that, it's going to say it's hormonal. Or then I was like, okay, well, that's not working. I got functional, I got hormone testing, and all my hormone levels are pretty good. So I was like, okay, well, what is it then? And then the internet led me to, it must be my gut. So then that honestly is what opened my eyes to functional testing. And that's when I got more into that and learned about that, and then pursued my functional nutrition training specifically for acne. And the rest is history. That's why I'm here. Because again, my eyes were opened and I was like, wow, if I would have had this information, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, when I was a teenager, things would have been so different. So we want to see how all these things interconnect with your skin, because as you'll see with my labs, it's not just, oh, your hormones are off, or oh, your gut is off, or you need to do this skincare routine. It's how everything plays together, because every single system in the body is impacting your skin. And we need to look at all of those different factors, especially if you're someone like me who dealt with chronic acne for her entire life. So if you're newer to this podcast, you don't know my acne journey up until this point, I'm going to briefly take us back. I have whole episodes on this, but just briefly, I pretty much struggled with acne for my entire life. So my mom always had acne. Well, my mom didn't always have acne, but she had acne growing up. And then my sister had acne. So it was always this thing of like, it's genetic. You're just always going to have acne. And so we always were going to the dermatologist. We were, doing all the topicals and all the creams and Proactive and bleaching all our towels when I was younger. And then I was at 18 put on birth control for a missing period. And one of the quote unquote benefits of being on birth control that my doctor told me is that it'll also help your acne. So it kind of helped. I would say kind of, sort of, but I still would have waves where my acne was really, really bad. And it was manageable though. I would say when I was on birth control, there were waves where it would like flare and I'd go to the dermatologist and they'd, recommend another prescription that helped for a little bit and then the flare would go down. But it wasn't until I stopped birth control when I was 27 that my acne got the worst it's ever been. So it was really, really chronic, popping up every single day. It was really deep. It was really cystic. It was very confidence wrecking. It was something that I thought about every single day. It was painful. It impacted, I didn't feel confident and I didn't feel sexy in my relationship, even though my fiance at the time, or my boyfriend at the time, now fiance, said he didn't notice it, but it really impacted me. And so that really was the biggest symptom that drove me to learn more. And that's when I went down this rabbit hole and spent so much time, so much money trying to fix my acne. And looking back, it was probably one of the hardest times in my life. And I'm very grateful for it because it's what brought me to the place that I am, where I'm helping other women heal their acne. And I get it because I've been there. So that's something women who work with me tell me all the time is like, I really wanted a coach who has been through this, they've gotten through it, and they understand physically what it's like to have acne, emotionally what it's like to have acne, and mentally what it's like to have acne, and the journey that comes with healing your acne, because acne is one of the most complicated things. It's one of the most complicated symptoms because there's so many underlying factors, and you also have it's internal, but then it's external as well. And so there's that, but then it also, skin sometimes is one of the last things to change. So for me, I've been my hardest client thus far because my skin is so sensitive, which I didn't realize. And because I had so much going on, so many underlying factors that were leading to my chronic acne, that basically when I stopped birth control, kind of a buffer or guardrails was taken down and it just like exploded. The acne had always been there, but taking that piece away, it just showed how much my body was struggling. And your acne is a sign, it's a symptom. It's a sign that your body needs support. It's not, again, it's not a skin issue, but it's a symptom of other deeper things going on. So I really want people to understand that. And that's why I want to show these labs today. So it took me, not to jump ahead too much, but it took me probably 9 months to see progress with my skin, taking a root cause approach. So a lot of clients see results sooner. Again, I've been my toughest client thus far. That may change in the future, but I've been my toughest client so far. And my acne really, I didn't see very much movement with my skin until I was doing these things, taking a root cause approach after I got the lab work done for about 9 months. And it wasn't really until about the year point where I really, really noticed like, okay, like I'm really getting breakouts. If I do, they're like surface level whiteheads. They're not like the deep cystic inflamed ones. And it also took me a while to, solve some of these pieces too. So it really made me a stronger clinician as well. And something that I'm grateful for because it will help me with being a better coach for my clients as well. Okay, so that's a story of my acne healing journey. So again, tried all the things, spent thousands of dollars, worked. Oh, the other thing I want to say too is in my desperation for trying to fix my skin, at my lowest of lows, when I'd done all the things, I invested in I'm doing air quotes here, root cause acne healing program that promised to be personalized and data driven. I followed them on Instagram for a while. I'm not going to name the program. If you want me to name what it is, you can, I'm not trying to bash anyone. However, I do not agree with their approach after going through their program. And I don't think I had informed consent based on the questions I asked. I think they lied a little bit and it made my acne worse. So, not going to name names, but if you're curious or just want to be like, is this the person? You can ask me on Instagram because I just don't want you to make the same mistake I did. But I really felt hopeful because based on everything I learned, this was before I pursued functional nutrition training of my own. I think that was the final straw is when I did this program and spent thousands of dollars on it. And my acne didn't get better, it got worse. But they promised it was personalized. They did labs. So they did the HTMA, which is a lab we'll go over today. And I've been following this person for a while. And I got on a call with them, a free call, and I asked because I noticed they were a little bit restrictive talk. They talked about like eliminating gluten and dairy, and I have a history of disordered eating, and I'm very passionate about, not restricting myself because I know how quickly restriction can lead back to triggering disordered eating, and I did not want that. And so I asked them, is this going to be restrictive? Like, do you eliminate foods? And they said, we've worked with lots of clients with past eating disorders. We don't lean into that if that's not appropriate. Literally, they did one lab, the HTMA, which is a fine starting point, but it's not going to uncover all the root causes of your acne if you've had chronic acne for your whole life. It was not personalized. They handed me a cookie cutter. Here are foods to eat. Here are foods not to eat. And they put you on a very restrictive diet to the point where I couldn't have caffeine, I couldn't have gluten, dairy, alcohol. Basically, it was like low glycemic index. So even foods like bananas, sweet potatoes, those types of foods, I couldn't have, even though they're nutritious foods. I couldn't have grass-fed butter. I had to have ghee. Like it was very, very, very restrictive. I could have peanuts. That was the hardest one, I think. I couldn't have peanuts and I love peanut butter. So it was so restrictive. And so I felt really lied to because I specifically asked about that. And they were like, oh yeah, we don't lean into that. And then it's like literally, that was what they did, the entire time. And so I did it. I was desperate. So I went against my better judgment as a dietitian and did that and did not help. It didn't get to my root causes. And they also put me on a ton of supplements, ton of supplements. Again, cookie cutter. They didn't do any gut work or gut testing, but they assumed that I had candida. They assumed I had overgrowth. They assumed all these things. So they just put me on a ton of supplements without testing. And that irks me to this day. And this is exactly why my program and my approach is so different. We're literally doing so many more labs to uncover the root causes of acne. and other chronic skin conditions, I never lean into restriction because I've seen first and foremost how that can actually make skin worse. Most women do not need to restrict more foods. They need to eat more foods and more variety to help rebuild their gut bacteria, to help replenish minerals and nutrients that their skin needs. Most of the time, it's not necessary. Sometimes if someone has a true allergy, of course, but most of the time when we get to the root of what's causing your skin conditions to begin with, it's not about the food. It's what environment is the food landing in, and do you have enough nutrients that your skin needs to basically be clear and to, renew its skin cells. So I don't lean into that. And I also do not prescribe any cookie cutter protocols. It's something that all of my stuff is so individualized, and everyone's protocol is so different depending on what their labs say, what their lifestyle is, what their goals are, and what's realistic for them. So I want to say that because I'm sure a lot of you listening to this can relate to my story of doing everything right, right? I'm a dietitian. Like, I have a master's degree in nutrition. I knew how to eat healthy. It's most of the time with people with acne, it's not about eating healthier or doing more. It's about getting the right data and uncovering the root causes of your chronic skin issues like acne. Okay. So without further ado, let's talk about what my labs said. So these are labs that I learned about in my functional nutrition training. And like I said, I worked with my mentor she's a registered dietitian. She's such a great mentor, knows so much about skin. So these are what I learned from that training. And these are the 4 labs that I ran on myself. I was my first client. These are the 4 labs that I ran on myself that truly changed the game. I would have never cleared my acne had I not run these labs, because again, I was doing everything right and it wasn't budging. So if you're listening to this might be something you want to come back to either on Spotify to watch the video or YouTube to watch the video, because I'm going to be sharing my screen and actually going through these labs. So if you're listening to this, I will try and be descriptive, but it might be helpful to come back and see a visual later. These are my first ever blood labs. So I'm going to go through the highlights. And one thing I want to say with blood labs too is I'm looking at what's optimal for women's health versus conventional medicine is flagging something that's a disease state, and they're looking at what's normal, again, air quotes, for men and women. So I'm going to give references here of like, okay, this technically isn't flagged here based on conventional standards. But for me, when I'm looking at what's optimal for women's health and for skin, this flags. And I'm going to give you kind of references for that. But I wanted to give that context because that way, if you're looking at this, you're like, but this isn't flagged on the lab test results. That's because I'm reading them from what's optimal. And that's why a lot of women who come to me, they're like, I've had so many labs done, but I've been told they're normal. That's because they're looking at them from the wrong lens. They're looking at what's normal for men and women and not what's optimal for women's health and feeling good. They're just looking at, okay, when it's bad enough to be a disease state, if that makes sense. Okay, so the first thing I notice is this iron panel. So when I'm looking at this iron panel, I'm looking at iron recycling and if there's any iron overload. So I personally didn't have any iron overload. I had the opposite issue where I had an iron recycling issue, which when iron recycling is a problem, a root cause of acne, it means that iron's getting stuck in the tissues and causing inflammation. So that can be a thing. And also with mine, I actually had more, it definitely was an iron recycling issue, but I just had lower levels of iron. And I was just really, really depleted. And this was likely due to my H. pylori, which we'll get to with the GI map, because gut bacteria like H. pylori, they can feed on iron, which can make someone's iron levels lower and cause skin issues. It can cause low energy, fatigue. And if you just supplement with iron, that can actually make things worse because it's feeding that bacteria. So that's where we can't just look at one isolated lab. We have to look at the whole picture, because if you just do one, you are missing the full picture and it could make things worse. So I had some iron deficiency here and some iron recycling issues. My iron saturation was even conventionally flagged as low. So that's something that I worked on. And then I had really, really sluggish detox pathways, which makes a lot of sense because birth control, when you're on that for several years, it is a burden on your detox system. So, like your liver, your gallbladder, your digestion, your skin, all of those detox organs. And so, bilirubin, which essentially is showing how your body is It shows how you can digest fats and detoxification and stuff like that, gallbladder health. So I like to see this closer to zero point 0.5 to zero point 0.7. I was zero point 0.2. So really, really low bilirubin levels here, given the context. And then my liver enzymes were all really high. Two of them conventionally were even flagged as high. So alkaline phosphatase was 77, AST, ALT 66 and 64. I like to see ALT and AST closer to 20. So these were 3 times the amount that they should have been. And alkaline phosphatase, I like to see this closer in the 60s. So this was definitely something that was causing my acne because my body couldn't detox properly. It had a heavy burden on it of toxins. I was really low in B vitamins. So here, this is a good example of the conventional range. They say anything from 232 to 1245 is normal. That's a huge range. That's a huge range. Or even going back up to these liver enzymes, they say 0 to 40 or 0 to 32 for AST and ALT. Okay, if your AST or ALT is 0, that is a problem. That is not good. That means like your liver enzymes are not functioning at all. So with like B12, I like to see this above 900. So this makes sense why I was so tired all the time and fatigued, even though I was eating healthy, I was exercising, I was drinking tons of water. So again, it goes to show if you are doing all the right things and you're really healthy, most of my clients are really healthy. They're doing all these foundational things, but they don't have this data. So just eating healthy and living a healthy life isn't enough, unfortunately. I want to talk about this testosterone level. So when I first did these blood labs, I did like as many blood labs as I could because I just wanted data. And again, I was my first client. And so I wanted to learn more, like everything. So my acne, let me actually pull up a picture for you guys. I want to give you some detailed pictures because I think it's really, really important. Okay, here's one. So you can see here chin, jaw, mustache line. So this is what's typically known as hormonal acne or high androgens. But as you can see from these labs, my androgens were extremely low. My testosterone was really low. So I did not have hormonal acne, even though it presented where it's commonly assumed to be hormonal acne. It's really, really important. I myth bust this all the time on social media and with my clients. Just because it's on your chin and your jaw doesn't mean it's hormonally driven. It could be, but again, what's causing those hormone imbalances to begin with? It's your gut, it's your liver, it's your mineral status, it's all these deeper things. So that's an important thing to note here. My vitamin A was extremely low. So I like to see vitamin A levels greater than 65. My vitamin A levels were 27.1. And so that is extremely, extremely low. And vitamin A is really important for the skin. So all antioxidants. So people with skin conditions need more antioxidants, more vitamins. And so more, certain vitamins, vitamin E, vitamin A, vitamin C, for example, selenium, all antioxidants. And so since vitamin A is so important, I was extremely low in this. And this also goes back to gut health because you're noticing a trend here. I was just really low in nutrients. And I think this is because I did that extreme elimination diet, because I have a past history of an eating disorder and just really healthy eating. Like I was a very healthy eater. And I don't think I had enough nutrients, but then I also had a lot of stuff going on in my gut, which led to malabsorption. I wasn't absorbing the nutrients from the food that I was consuming. And then the last thing I'll say here is that my so my zinc was pretty low. I like to see this closer to 100, and my copper was a little bit elevated. I like to see copper closer to 100. So I do have a copper IUD. And so I think this copper is falsely elevated. But nonetheless, it's imbalanced compared to zinc because these are really important for mood. They're also important for skin, and copper is important for iron recycling, like we first talked about. And so, we want to be mindful of this because I also not only had acne, but I had really bad anxiety when I first came off birth control, like really bad to the point where it was like interfering. No one knew it, like except maybe like Jared. But It was like impacting my sleep. It was impacting my day. It was lots of intrusive thoughts. And so this is something to note because if you have high levels of copper, low levels of zinc, this can contribute to mood symptoms like anxiety. And I see this all the time. And I hear this all the time from women who have stopped birth control or they've started it and they have mood symptoms. So that's a huge root cause. So those are my blood level or my blood result. Okay, so the next thing I want to go through is this HTMA. I like looking at the HTMA and blood labs because these are things that they're just really, really helpful to look at together. So the first thing I want to talk about is this metabolic type. And before I dive into that, actually, just a reminder of what this HTMA is, or if you're newer to this, HTMA is a hair tissue mineral analysis. It shows your mineral status for the past 3 months. And it also shows how it gives us insight into how your cells are functioning at a cellular level. So it shows what's happening inside the cell versus standard blood labs just show that moment in time and what's happening outside the cell. Certain minerals like potassium only show what's happened, or 90% of them 90% of potassium lives inside the cell, is what I'm trying to say. So it's just a better overall picture of what is happening with mineral status and also how they interact because minerals are synergistic, but they're also antagonistic. So metabolic type, there's 2 different types. There's fast and there's slow. There's no better metabolic type. So I'm a fast 2 because then there's subtypes. So there's fast 1, 2, 3, 4, and then there's slow 1, 2, 3, 4. Fast is indicating more fight or flight. So this is your nervous system. It really shows nervous system, like where are you at? And this is not surprising because I'm type A, I'm an entrepreneur, I'm a go-getter, I have anxiety. I'm type A, I'm a recovering perfectionist. So this makes a lot of sense to me. And when you're fast 2, you're not only stuck in sympathetic, fight or flight, but you have faster adrenals, a faster metabolism, and more sluggish thyroid function on a cellular level. So this isn't a diagnostic test, but this is showing that I probably was dealing with stress for a long time and that my adrenals were functioning in overdrive because of that. And my thyroid needed some support, which was consistent with my blood labs. I didn't go over my thyroid results, my blood labs, but that it did show I had some thyroid stuff to work on as well, which is important for skin. When someone's a fast type, it also means that they need more magnesium and more calcium. But as we'll see down here, this white section, this is what's considered optimal. So you can see across the board, really nutrient depleted. This tracks, right? Calcium was really low, magnesium was low, potassium was low. And interestingly, my sodium was really high, but that can be common with fast types because of how your adrenals function. So my body was either burning through sodium really quickly because of stress, or it was holding on to sodium because of stress. So this doesn't mean I need less salt. In fact, I was actually really surprised at this result when I first learned about it because now I do, but like back in the day, dietetics were taught salt is the devil essentially. And so don't use salt. And so I never use salt. And now I salt my food so much. I drink it in mineral mocktails. It's so different now. A lot of things I do differently than when I first graduated from school or when I was a younger dietitian, but I digress. So this is showing my body needs more salt because I'm stressed, but I have what's called a low 3 pattern where 3 out of my 4 macrominerals are low. And so this is significant because your skin needs nutrients. So this is first and foremost, making sure you're eating enough and making sure you're getting the right nutrients for your body. That's step 1. That is step 1. And that was something I needed to work on, especially when you're a fast type. You also need to work on stress support. That was really hard for me. Still is really hard for me. I say that almost every podcast, I feel like, but I'm working on it. And my potassium was 1. So it was almost non-existent here. And looking at the rest of these nutrients, just super depleted. So that was something I needed to work on right from the get-go. Over here to toxic elements. my uranium was really, really high. So again, you want to be within this white section. So I had a high toxin burden. My uranium was high, likely from my water. I'm guessing it's a past exposure because we tested our water. We do have well water, and well water can be a significant source of uranium. But we tested it, it was negative. We did a pretty expensive test for it. So I'm guessing this was a previous exposure that my body is getting rid of at the moment, or was getting rid of at the moment. So this makes sense too in terms of my detox pathways were really sluggish. So if your detox pathways are sluggish and then you have all this toxic burden, like I had uranium, I couldn't detox, then that can contribute to acne. That's going to show up in your skin. So that was something I had to work on. I would have had no clue I had high uranium levels, right? And then this last section of the HTMA, these are the significant ratios. So each of these correlates to a specific body system. You want to be within this white section. Almost every single one of my ratios is out of balance. So this first one is your calcium phosphorus ratio. This is your nervous system. This is what determines metabolic type. So when this is lower, this means you're stuck in fight or flight. So that's why I'm a fast 2. So I really need to work on stress support. Sodium, potassium, this is your vitality of the cell ratio. So when you have healthy cells, think of them as like plump grapes. But if you have depleted cells, they're like shriveled up raisins. So I had some raisin cells, some pretty bad raisin cells. And this was sky high. And so this was showing that I was actively dealing with stress. So again, really, really needed to focus on nervous system support. This was really helpful because I'm someone who, looking back, I'm like, wow, yeah, I was like really stressed. Like my heart was racing all the time. Like, I, with my brain was going a million miles a minute. I was juggling so many things with my previous job and then opening my business. Like when I did these tests, but I didn't realize I was stressed because, like a lot of women, I was like, you know what? Like I'm in a loving relationship. I have no reason to be stressed. I have a job that I love. I have a good life, but I want to remind you that stress doesn't exist in isolation. It's like a day-to-day thing. And think about like the past few years. Think about your whole life of stress. And this is not just mental, emotional, but it's also physical. So my past history of an eating disorder, not nourishing my body properly for several years, being on birth control for so long, which depletes valuable minerals. All those personality characteristics that I have of like type A, perfectionistic, all those things contribute to that. So you can't change your personality, but this data can give you some real good kick in the butt feedback of like, okay, I actually am really stressed. My body is telling me that, and I need to listen. And this is impacting my skin. Because I know it's one of the least fun things to work on, especially when it comes to acne, because you're like, my skin is stressing me out, right? So how am I supposed to, deal with that when I'm breaking out all the time? Like it's this vicious cycle. I get it. This calcium potassium ratio, this is your thyroid ratio. So this is showing more sluggish thyroid function on a cellular level. So this means I needed potassium's really big for that, getting enough calcium, which both of those were lower. My iodine was also low, which we'll go to next, which is important for thyroid function as well. Zinc and copper, I'm going to skip that because we already talked about that with the blood labs. So then sodium and magnesium, this is my adrenal ratio. This is showing more sluggish adrenal, or sorry, not sluggish. This is showing faster adrenals. So my adrenals were like bam, 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 overdrive. So I really needed more sodium and more magnesium to balance this out. And ding, 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 stress support. Okay. And then the calcium magnesium, this was optimal. This was like one of the only ones that was optimal. And this is your blood sugar ratio. So I'm pretty proud of that. I've always had pretty good blood sugar, but it's because I, now really nourish myself. I make it a priority to eat every couple of hours, have really balanced meals and snacks, and that helps me feel better too. So that was one good thing. One thing I was doing right. Okay, now let's go to iodine. Love iodine. This is probably one of my this is my favorite test, honestly, to run on clients because it's super simple, super, super simple compared to these other labs I'm going through. But this is something no one is testing for. And iodine is such a misunderstood mineral. It's so helpful for skin health. So, so helpful. I don't want to say especially for the quote unquote hormonal acne, like the chin, jaw acne around the mouth, but kind of like it's really helpful for skin in general, but especially if you have that presentation where it's like on your chin, jaw, around your mouth. this can be so helpful because essentially iodine competes with fluoride and other halogens like bromine, chlorine. And so think about fluoride, right? Drinking water with fluoride in it, toothpaste with fluoride in it. That gets stored in your teeth and in your bones. And so your teeth, that's where my acne was all around that area in my mouth. And so this was a huge driver in my skin. And so when we look at this, we're looking at the excretion. So what the way this test works is it's a urine sample. And the way this test works is basically you take an iodine tablet and then you collect your urine for the next 24 hours. If you have enough iodine, you're going to excrete 90% of the iodine tablet because your body doesn't need it, right? Like it's going to excrete most of it. If you're deficient in iodine, your body is going to suck up that iodine like a sponge. So I was 50.2% excretion. So I was about half of what I should have been excreting. Okay. So I was excreting not very much because I was really deficient in iodine, which was, again, a huge driver in my acne. Would have had no idea. This is also, iodine is really helpful for thyroid as well. So my thyroid needed support. It's also helpful for detox support. It's helpful for peristalsis, so like digestion. And so iodine is really great for hormone balance overall. And then last but not least, I want to go through my gut tests. This is going to be a little bit longer because I want to take you through, I think my gut health has been the least straightforward because of some pesky pathogens that I've had to deal with. So this first page is showing that I have had, I'm talking like these are my recent ones, but I've had several retests since then. I had food poisoning. So I had E. coli, probably from contaminated food somewhere. So that was interesting. I would have never known. And also it's worth mentioning that I had zero gut symptoms. Looking back, I probably did have some gut symptoms, but like compared to most people, I had some like bloating and gas, but like really, I did not even think about that. That's why I dismissed gut health for so long and just really focused on hormones because of what I was hearing based on where my acne was. But then also because I was like, well, I don't have digestive issues. So I find after running so many labs and so many women over the past couple of years, it's funny because it seems like the ones who don't have as much digestive issues, a lot of times are the ones who have really bad GI maps, but the ones who do have digestive issues, a lot of times it's like low levels of good bacteria, maybe some pathogens, and a lot of times it's just like poor digestion because of low stomach acid. Not all the time. Like there are definitely people who have significant GI distress and their GI map is like crazy. But that's just something I think is funny and interesting to note, which again goes back to like why testing is so helpful because testing versus guessing, it's like, well, you get that data you would have never known of before based on common sense. The other significant thing is H. pylori. H. pylori it's a tricky little booger. So H. pylori is a big contributor to acne, big. And my levels were pretty high to begin with. So I went through an H. pylori protocol to get rid of that and to get rid of the food poisoning. I had to go through multiple protocols because it would not move. And in fact, if you look at this other one, this is a retest I did, it came back even higher after I did a killing protocol. There were other things that looked better, like my E. coli was gone, my good bacteria looked better, my opportunistics looked better. Because if we go back to this original one, I had a lot of dysbiosis going on. So like some high levels of the good bacteria. So I didn't have a low bacteria issue. I had more of a like issue of low stomach acid, which was probably caused by H. pylori. And then I had some high opportunists, some bad guys in there. So that improved with my other GI map, but it's still that H. pylori went higher, which was really frustrating. So I had to go through a couple different rounds of killing protocols and I took breaks in between because it was a lot. And I knew a big thing I needed to focus on was stress because if you're stressed, you're burning through minerals. That's going to negatively impact stomach acid, which is going to encourage the growth of H. pylori, it's going to be like, I'm sticking here because this environment's great. Even though you're taking these antimicrobials, like, I'm not going anywhere. It made it more treatment resistant. So I really focused on that. And I ended up doing after going through multiple antimicrobial protocols, I was like, okay, that's a lot of pills. They're intense. I'm not going to lie. And they're intense if you have to keep doing them. And so I did some digging and I actually decided to do a different course of action. And I did Matula tea, which is, it's a pricey tea. You can only get it from Africa. But Matula tea is clinically proven to reduce H. pylori. So I did 30 days of that. It was so much easier than doing the pills. It was 2 bags of teas. It's just like a Lipton, but it's not. 2 cups of tea per day for 30 days. And I did some prep work too. Like I did some oral microbiome support and I did some like Saccharomyces boulardii, which is a probiotic that helps eat away H. pylori. I did some other things as well, really worked on stress support, but that was the only thing that helped eradicate my H. pylori. So one reason I wanted to share that is because I want you guys to see that healing is not linear. Okay. So my journey to healing my skin was not linear. It required trust in myself in a root cause healing approach. It required some pivoting. It required consistency. And it required, it had its ups and downs, like for sure. Like there were times where I was like, okay, this isn't working. Like it made me second guess everything. It made me second guess my training, me as a clinician. But I just needed to like stick with it. I just needed to pivot sometimes. And sometimes I needed to be consistent. So acne can be really, really challenging. And like I said, sometimes it's one of the last things to change and it can take a while. 80% of clients that have skin conditions, chronic skincare conditions, it usually takes 6+ months. 6 to 12 months is like the sweet spot for what we see 80% of clients healing their skin or noticing noticeable improvements in their skin. Sometimes it's longer, right? Sometimes it's a year or plus. Not all the time. Some people experience major skin wins and skin improvement within 6 months, but a lot of times it's longer. And I was one of those people where it was longer. So I'm not immune to this. And this is what makes me, I feel like a really good coach because I've been there and I understand that sometimes the waiting game and just consistency can be really, really hard. And so I know when to be consistent, when to pivot because of my own experience and helping so many other women go through this too. So that was something I wanted to note. So back to my original GI map. The other things too, I definitely had low stomach acid. So that was something that I had to work on increasing my stomach acid because that was inhibiting digestion of food. It was encouraging H. pylori to stay and it was inhibiting like vitamins like vitamin A and vitamins B, zinc to be absorbed. So I did a lot of stomach acid support. I worked on increasing this elastase, which is helpful for like protein digestion. And then down here, you can see my immune response. So my system in my gut was in overdrive. And I was reacting to gluten. Now you might be thinking, Taylor, but you said you don't rely on elimination diets. And yes, that is true. I don't rely on elimination diets. However, this is an example of, okay, my body was clearly reacting because I have data. I have data to show that my body is negatively reacting to gluten and it's causing an immune response in my gut, which is contributing to my acne. So when this is happening, there's so many different things, right? Like I did eliminate gluten strictly for 6 months, but then I was able to incorporate it back. And so you'll see with my most recent GI map, which was January of this year, you'll see that my digestion looks a lot better. And I'm not responding to gluten anymore. And I was eating gluten when I did this test. You have to be eating gluten for it to get an accurate measure or an accurate reading. So that is significant because that shows that a lot of people don't have to be gluten-free for a long time. I recommend 6 months. And then we can start incorporating it back in and see how your skin does, how your digestion feels, how your symptoms feel. And then we can always retest to see if your body is reacting to it. But a lot of times it doesn't have to be a forever thing. It's just an acute thing to work on to help your body heal. So I think that's important. So those are my labs. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, come back here. Okay. So all in all, in summary, I had the H. pylori, which took probably like a year and a half to eradicate, multiple different trial and errors with that. I had low stomach acid, so that was inhibiting the absorption of nutrients from food, really low vitamins and minerals that are important for skin healing and that glowy complexion, sluggish thyroid, but then also low iodine, which is impacting my thyroid and therefore my metabolism, therefore my skin. And then I had sluggish detox pathways. So those were all of the root causes. So as you can see, there's a ton there and everything connects. And so I really focused on making sure I was getting mineral mocktails in. I made sure I was taking targeted supplements that I needed to increase and replenish those nutrients that I needed the most. And I worked on eradicating the H. pylori, getting my stomach acid up, supporting my detox pathways, and much, much more. I went through an iodine protocol, all of those things. And then I did some retesting because for me, it's really, really important to know, things are always going to be shifting. And so I always want to make for sure that I'm pointed in the right direction, I'm running in the right direction. Versus if you don't have this data, you might be listening to this and be like, I don't have this data. So therefore I don't know if I'm like running in the right direction or not, right? Are you running towards your goal, towards meeting your goal, or are you running the opposite direction? And if so, it doesn't matter how fast you're running, you're never going to meet that end goal, okay? Because you're not running in the right direction. So I think that's important. So the last thing I want to leave you with is just some hope that if you are struggling with chronic acne, you are not alone. I was in my 30s. I am in my 30s, but this was a couple years ago that this happened. And so I thought I was dealing with this. And I struggled post birth control for 4 whole years with chronic acne. Waiting it out did not work. Skin approaches only did not work. Focusing on hormones only did not work. Focusing on just a cookie cutter list of supplements did not work. You really need a personalized approach with data to heal your acne. So if you're like me and you're dealing with acne, you've been dealing with it for your whole life, you've tried everything, I would really, really encourage you to get these functional tests done with me or with someone else who specializes in skin, because it is honestly a game changer. And so if that's something that you're interested in, and if you want to get these tests done with me, if you want some coaching support with this, personalized protocol, or any hands-on, coaching with this, feel free to apply in the link in the show notes. I also have a new offer. You probably heard the ad midway through here, but the hormone healing testing bundle, if you want just labs only and you want this data, maybe you're a little bit apprehensive to invest in working with someone because you've been burned so many times like I had been. I totally get it. That's exactly why I created that hormone healing testing bundle. It's a completely new offer at the point of this recording, and it's really designed to give you answers and data. So you'll get you can get 3 of the labs, or you can add on iodine for just $150 more. If you have acne, would highly suggest adding on the iodine, but it will give you that data of like, okay, what are your root causes that are causing your chronic acne or other chronic skin conditions? And that way you know what direction to run into. Okay, that doesn't make sense. What direction to run towards. So it doesn't come with any one-on-one coaching or protocols, but if you would like that after receiving your data and your video analysis, then you can always apply that investment towards upgrading to one-on-one coaching support to help clear your acne for good. Other than that, thank you so much for listening, and I hope this was helpful. Stay nourished, friends.